You're sitting in a meeting. Someone just praised your work in front of everyone, and the first thought in your head isn't pride. It's panic. They're going to find out. Find out what exactly? You don't know, you just know the feeling. That cold drop in your stomach that says you don't belong here, that any minute now someone is going to tap you on the shoulder and ask you to leave. Psychologists call this imposter syndrome. But the real answer for why you feel it is far stranger than a personality flaw or low self-esteem. It's not really about you at all. It's about a survival system built for a world that no longer exists. Here's the strange part. The people who feel this most intensely are usually the most competent people in the room. Studies on imposter syndrome consistently find that high achievers report it more than low achievers. Doctors feel it. Professors feel it. Award-winning writers feel it. The feeling has almost nothing to do with actual skill. So if it's not about skill, what is it about? To answer that, you have to go back further than your job, further than school, further than civilization itself. You have to go back to a time when your ancestors lived in groups of maybe 50 to 150 people, and their entire survival depended on one thing: staying inside that group. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years studying group size in early humans. He found something that still shapes your brain today. Human social cognition seems built for roughly 150 stable relationships. Not more. That number wasn't an accident. It was a ceiling set by the size of your brain, specifically the part that tracks who is trustworthy, who is a threat, and who might turn on you. Now imagine living inside one of those groups, 50,000 years ago. There's no police force, no courts, no safety net. If the group decides you don't belong, that's not an insult. That's a death sentence. Exile from the tribe meant facing predators alone, finding food alone, surviving winter alone. Alone was not romantic. Alone was usually fatal. So your ancestors developed an early warning system, a part of the brain whose entire job was to constantly monitor one question: am I still accepted here? Am I still useful? Have I done something that makes the group see me as a burden instead of an asset? This system didn't wait for you to actually get kicked out. That would be too late. It needed to flag the danger early before it happened. So it became hypersensitive. It started treating small social risks like major threats. A raised eyebrow, a moment of silence after you spoke, a task you weren't sure you did well enough. Your brain still runs that exact program today. Except now, instead of a tribe of 150, it's running on a corporate team of 12, or a classroom of 30, or a group chat of 8 people from work. The mechanism hasn't updated, only the scenery has. This is where it gets interesting, because the feeling of being a fraud isn't random. It tends to spike at very specific moments, right after a promotion, right after praise, right after you're given more responsibility, more visibility, more status. Why would success trigger fear instead of confidence? Because in ancestral terms, status was dangerous. Psychologist and primatologist Franz de Waal documented this extensively in social primates, including chimpanzees, where individuals who rose too quickly in status without strong alliances were often targeted, isolated, or attacked by the group. Standing out wasn't safe. Standing out invited scrutiny, and scrutiny in a small tribal group could turn into exile. So the part of your brain monitoring social risk doesn't celebrate your promotion the way you consciously do. It reads more visibility as more exposure. It reads more responsibility as more chances to be caught failing in front of the group. The applause you hear consciously gets translated, underneath, into a threat alarm. That's the moment imposter syndrome usually hits hardest. Not when you fail, when you succeed publicly. There's a second layer to this, and it has to do with something psychologists call the spotlight effect. Researcher Thomas Gilovich ran a series of studies showing that people dramatically overestimate how much others notice them, judge them, and remember their mistakes. In one famous experiment, students were asked to wear an embarrassing t-shirt into a room of strangers, then estimate what percentage of people noticed it. Their estimates were nearly double the actual number of people who noticed anything at all. Why would your brain be wired to assume everyone is watching you that closely? Because for most of human history, they actually were. In a group of 150 people who you depended on for food, protection, and survival, Everyone really was watching everyone else. Reputation wasn't a vague modern concept. It was tracked daily, in real time, by every person around you, because your reputation determined whether you got fed during a bad season or got cut loose. Your brain assumes you're still being watched at that level. So when you make one mistake in a meeting of 12 people, part of you reacts as if the entire tribe just witnessed it and is now quietly recalculating your value. They didn't notice. They're thinking about their own emails, but your nervous system doesn't know that. It's still running tribal math. Here's the part that should actually make you feel better, not worse. If imposter syndrome was really a sign that you're incompetent, the least skilled people would feel it the most. They don't. Research from psychologist Pauline Rose Clance, who coined the term in the 1970s after studying high-achieving women in academia, found the opposite pattern entirely. The most capable, most accomplished people in her studies were often the ones most convinced they didn't deserve their position. That's not a coincidence. That's the alarm system working exactly as designed. The more visible your success, the more your ancient threat detector treats it as exposure, not achievement. There's a strange twist hiding inside all of this, and it's the part most people never connect. The opposite of imposter syndrome isn't confidence. It's a separate, much more dangerous failure of this same system, known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. Psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger found that people with the least competence in a skill often rate their ability the highest. They don't feel like frauds. They feel certain. So look at what's actually happening. The people who know the most doubt themselves the most. The people who know the least doubt themselves the least. Your discomfort isn't proof you're unqualified. In a strange way, it's closer to proof of the opposite. It means your internal model is accurate enough to see the edges of what you don't know. And that edge feels like danger because, for most of human history, the edge of your knowledge really was where danger started. There's another layer worth sitting with, because it explains why this feeling shows up unevenly. Why some people seem untouched by it, while others are quietly drowning in it during what looks, from the outside, like total success. Psychologists Joan Harvey and Cynthia Katz, who expanded on Clance's early work, noticed that imposter feelings tend to cluster around transitions. Starting a new job, getting promoted, entering a new field where you don't yet know the unwritten rules. That timing isn't random either. Think about what a transition actually meant for your ancestors. Moving into a new group, marrying into a different clan, being accepted by a different set of hunters after your own group fractured. Every transition was a test. New groups didn't automatically trust newcomers. Trust had to be earned slowly through demonstrated reliability over time. Arriving somewhere new and immediately acting like you belonged, without having proven anything yet, could get you treated with suspicion instead of welcome. So your brain learned a rule. When you enter a new environment, hold back. Underclaim your value. Watch first. Prove second. That rule kept people alive in shifting tribal politics for tens of thousands of years. Today it just makes you feel like a fraud on your first day at a job you were fully qualified for, or in the first year after a promotion you clearly earned. The system isn't checking whether you're competent. It's checking whether the group has had enough time to verify you. Those are two completely different questions, and your conscious mind keeps answering the wrong one. There's also a quieter version of this that doesn't get talked about enough, and it has to do with comparison. In your ancestors' world, you only ever compared yourself to the other 150 people you actually knew. That was the entire visible field of human achievement. If you were a skilled hunter among 50 other hunters, you had real, accurate information about where you stood. Now your brain is fed a constant stream of the most accomplished people on Earth, all at once, through a screen stripped of context. You don't see their failed years. You don't see their 40 drafts. You see the finished version of millions of people simultaneously, and your ancient comparison module, built to rank you against 50 hunters, tries to rank you against all of them at the same time. It was never built for that math. No wonder it returns an answer that feels like inadequacy. Researchers studying social comparison theory, building on work originally developed by psychologist Leon Festinger in the 1950s, found that humans compare themselves automatically and constantly, almost involuntarily, especially to people they perceive as similar to them. Festinger was working decades before social media existed, studying small groups and direct social circles. He had no way of predicting what would happen when that same automatic comparison engine got handed an infinite, algorithmically optimized feed of other people's highlight reels. The mechanism he described is still exactly the one running in your head every time you open an app and feel, within 4 seconds, smaller than you did before you opened it. None of this means the feeling is fake. It means the feeling is responding to the wrong scale. It's tribal software trying to process a global dataset, and the mismatch comes out as a sinking, specific certainty that everyone else has it figured out and you alone are improvising. There's one more piece worth understanding, because it explains why simply telling yourself, "I deserve this," rarely works. You can't out-argue an alarm system with logic, because the alarm isn't located in the part of your brain that processes logic at all. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux, who spent decades mapping the brain's fear circuitry, showed that threat signals route through the amygdala first, often before the more analytical prefrontal cortex even gets a chance to weigh in. That sequence made sense for your ancestors. If a shape moves in the grass, you want your body reacting in a fraction of a second, not waiting for a calm, reasoned assessment of whether it's actually a predator. Speed mattered more than accuracy. A few wasted sprints from a swaying bush was a much smaller cost than one missed lion. That same wiring fires when a meeting goes quiet after you speak, or when an email from your manager just says, "Can we talk?" Your amygdala doesn't wait to find out if it's good news. It assumes the worst first, because for nearly all of human history, assuming the worst first was the safer bet. Your prefrontal cortex eventually catches up and tells you correctly that it's probably fine. But by then, your heart rate has already spiked and your stomach has already dropped. You experience the fear before you experience the thought. This is why imposter syndrome doesn't feel like a belief you can simply reason your way out of. It feels like a fact arriving from somewhere deeper and faster than reasoning. Because it is. It's not a conclusion your mind reached. It's a reflex your body fired off first, the same reflex that once kept a much smaller, much more exposed version of you alive. So what do you do with a survival system built for tribes of 150, now running inside a world of billions, strangers, and screens? You don't get rid of it. You can't. It's not a glitch you patch out. It's a few 100,000 years of inherited caution, and it's not going anywhere. But you can recognize it for what it actually is, in the moment it shows up. The next time you're praised for something and your stomach drops instead of lifts, that's not evidence against you. That's an ancient alarm mistaking a meeting room for a tribal council. The next time you assume everyone clocked your one mistake, remember Jailovich's t-shirt study. They didn't see it. They were thinking about themselves, the same way you were thinking about yourself a moment ago. You're sitting in a meeting. Someone just praised your work in front of everyone, and the first thought in your head still isn't pride. It's panic. But now you know what that panic actually is. It's not your performance under review. It's your ancestors, still watching the tree line, still counting the tribe, still mistaking applause for the sound of a branch snapping in the dark.